Hello and welcome to a very special podcast series, Banker with a Soul, that chronicles the life and career of Mr. P.N. Vasudevan, MD and CEO, Equitas Small Finance Bank. Mr. Vasudevan is often described as a banker with a soul for his contribution in uplifting the lives and livelihoods of thousands of families by offering small ticket loans and bringing them into the formal banking net. I'm your host, Gaurav Chaudhary. The core focus of this series, exclusive to Earshot, is to empower the listener about the inspirational contribution of Mr. Vasudevan, his people-first approach in life and work, and his remarkable story of remaining steadfastly focused on his goals despite challenges. In many ways, the series will zoom in and zoom out of his life stories to chronicle the journey of Equitas Small Finance Bank led by an indefatigable Mr. Vasudevan. A very warm welcome, Mr. Vasudevan, and absolutely delighted to host you for this special series.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's start with something from your early days. You were born in Madurantakam. Your ancestors belonged to Kanchipuram. Your great-grandfather was a Vedic scholar. Your grandfather was a professor of Sanskrit in Sanskrit College, Madurantakam, and later taught at the Banaras Hindu University in Varanasi. Your father was a Hindi teacher in a school. How did this distinguished legacy shape your thinking and worldview as you were growing up? Tell us about your early years.
Yeah, hi. So I was, born in a family of 5 sons, no daughters, and
Yes,
my
sir.
father was a school teacher, and we were in Tindivanam, that's a district in Tamil Nadu, and my father was a Hindi teacher in a private school in Tindivanam.
Yeah.
But in the 1960s, we in Tamil Nadu, we had that anti-Hindi agitation. And because of that, the Hindi as a subject was taken out of the syllabus of that particular school where my father was a teacher. And so he had to look around for some other job. And luckily, he was also a Sanskrit. He had also learned Sanskrit. So he had applied for Central School, Kendriya Vidyalaya. And so he got a posting in Kendriya Vidyalaya inside the IIT Madras campus in 1968. And so from Tindivanam, we as a family shifted to Chennai in 68. And so that's how the whole journey of our journey to Chennai started.
Yes. So this is an interesting turn of events, the one that you just narrated, that probably would have had influence in your late life. As you said, in the 60s, you were about 7 years old. This is something where I read. There was, and as you mentioned, there was an anti-Hindi agitation in Tamil Nadu. As a result, the Hindi subject was removed from his school. Now, your father lost his job. Subsequently, he got a job as a Sanskrit teacher in Central School, Kendriya Vidyalaya, located in at the IIT Madras campus. You moved to Chennai and lived in Velachery, which was still a village. Now, help us understand this. Till the 5th standard, you studied in Tamil medium primary school run by a local panchayat. You did well in your studies, was made the school pupil leader in the 5th standard. You continued with the 6th standard in a local Tamil medium Christian school where you did well and was made the class monitor. And suddenly, things changed. And how did it influence your life?
Yeah. So generally, I used to be a very studious student, if not a bright one necessarily. So the Tamil medium, the Velachery where we were living in Chennai, it was a very, very small village in those days. And it was a panchayat union at that time. And there was a panchayat primary school, 1 to 5 standards. And it was obviously purely Tamil medium. So I was reading in Tamil medium till 5th. And I did become the school people leader in 5th because generally I think I was a very obedient, studious kind of person maybe. And I remember one incident which happened in the 5th standard. Normally, as a school people leader, there are some programs where you're supposed to talk, to the students and all that. So generally, I used to get the help from my father. He'll write some speech, I'll mug it up, and then I'll go and kind of narrate it in the stage. So there was one occasion where I don't remember why, but I just was unprepared. I mean, somehow I didn't ask my father, and he didn't give me a speech or something. I went unprepared, and I was sweating. I was sweating, also thinking that, what am I going to stand up and say? And genuinely, I mean, it may look a little, exaggerated, But seriously, I thought to myself, is this the end of the world for me? Is this the end of the world for me if I come out looking very bad in this particular meeting? Is it the end of the world for me? And then I could realize that it is really not the end of the world. And then that gave me a lot of comfort that there's still life after this program, and it's not going to be over. And then I don't know what I did, I don't know how I did and all that. I don't remember all that, but I still remember that, and that is something which has stuck to me even today. Even now in the bank, if there's some issue, some people come and say, "Sir, I want to say this, something will happen," and all that. The moment they tell me what's the problem, I just step back and say, "Is this the end of the world for the bank?" And if it is not, then I don't have to become worried. Yes, it's an issue. We'll focus and get it solved, but I don't have to become worried. So that attitude, I think, somehow has stuck with me. That there's nothing in life. I mean, there may be a couple of things in life which are really the end of the world, and I hope that none of us really come to those scenarios ever. But minus that, everything else is an issue to be solved and handled and moved on. So there's no need to really get worried and things like that. So that's something which stuck with me even today. And then I moved to sixth standard in a Christian school. That was a English medium school. So for the first time in sixth standard, I was learning ABCD. Rhymes, etc.
No, it's a very inspirational story. You as you just mentioned, you started learning English only in the sixth standard, and that too the alphabet. And I read somewhere that you mentioned somewhere that so poor is your English that during the half-yearly exam, and there was an incident where you needed a thread to tie your answer sheets. You went to the invigilator and asked for nool, as you did not know the English word for it. He was not a Tamilian, so he did not understand what you wanted. So finally, after considerable thought, you said that you wanted a rope. Run us through this experience. How did the teacher finally respond? And when you look back now at those days, these are remarkable experiences that would have held very, you would have taught you various lessons for your later life and career.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are instances which stick in your mind. I joined my mother was very insistent that I join an English medium school, and my father was a teacher in Kendriya Vidyalaya, and yet we were all in Tamil medium. All of us were in Tamil medium. So she kept pestering my father to put us into English medium. So I was asked to write an entrance exam in Kendriya Vidyalaya for 7th standard because I had already completed 6th. But then I assumed that I wrote so badly that the principal called me to father and said, "Don't put him in 7th. He will not be able to manage. If you are really keen, then put him in 6th again. Let him start from 6th." And so I went into 6th. And when I was just in the stage of learning my rhymes, these people are all talking in English. Their lessons are in English. And I had no knowledge of Hindi. I was not having any exposure to Hindi. But these people have already learned Hindi from their first standard onwards. And in sixth standard, not only Hindi as a language, but social studies, history, civics, geography was in Hindi. And
that's right.
They're all learning in Hindi subjects. And I didn't know any knowledge of what Hindi is all about. And English, of course, I was, as I said, in the rhymes standards. So I could not talk to anybody in the class. Nobody could be conversing with me. And I had only one friend from Velachery, Srinivasan. I could only talk to him because he'll speak to me in Tamil. So he was the only person I could speak to. He was a brilliant guy. So he finally went on to get into IIT Madras. And then, of course, he joined TCS. And he did well for himself. But he was my friend in 6th standard. He was my only friend. And in this exam, the incidents you report, yes, so I wanted a thread, but I didn't know the word for that in English. So finally, after a lot of thinking and straining, I came with this word rope. I thought rope means thread. So I asked him, "Can I have a rope, please?" And, there's a little bit of, sniggering around the classrooms and all that. And I think they all realized what I'm really asking for.
Absolutely.
Extremely embarrassing. In fact, I remember in the class, my teacher, the Hindi teacher, gave the first test in Hindi. And then after correcting, she gave the notebook to us and said, "I'll call you by name. and all of you please give me your mark. I'll note it down. And I
Okay.
was thinking that why couldn't she have noted down the mark and given the notebook? Why should he do it like this? And then she started calling names, and everybody stood up and was giving their mark. And mine was actually 1.25 out of 20. That was what I had
Yeah,
got.
yeah. Great.
And
I
thankfully,
know
since
about
my
that.
name
Yeah.
is in V, my name came last. So by the time my name was called, we were all crowding the teacher. We were all sixth, obviously small boys. So we were crowding the teacher. So I went near her ears. I was standing ready. When she called my name, I just whispered into her ears my mark, so
Right.
that some of my other fellows will, hear me give my mark.
It must have been extremely tough for you. I can relate to some of these because in my own life, not obviously my life, I mean your life is an inspiration, but I also come from a very small town in Assam, and when I started writing in English only after I joined college in Delhi, and otherwise I went to a completely vernacular medium school, Assamese medium government school in in Assam. So I can understand, I can relate to it, and it's I mean it becomes a little bit of inhibition set in, but once you overcome it, a whole new world of opportunities open up, and which is something that I can really vouch for, and in your case it's an inspiration for millions. You know Somehow you scrape through your sixth standard, as you just mentioned, but then your father was transferred to the central school Trivandrum, and you all moved to Trivandrum. But the thing here is that, but there's a defining change in this period. There was a lending library near your house. Your father enrolled you in that library. Was it a boon for you getting enrolled in that library? Because it may have opened up opportunities for you to read books and fiction, and then that would have opened up a whole new world of opportunities by learning the language itself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that I think was an extremely important turning point for me, I believe. Because obviously I just couldn't speak English. And in Trivandrum, though, either they speak in English or Hindi, and a few of them will speak in Malayalam. No, not one guy will speak in Tamil, obviously. And somehow, I don't know how or whatever, my father enrolled me in this learning library near our house. And I started going there and taking some books. And I remember Enid Blyton was my first book. And
Yeah.
then just became a voracious reader, voracious reader. I think the next 4 years, from 7th to 10th, in 4 years, I must have read a few thousand books. And I became a voracious reader. I was extremely interested in all the storybooks. And as I was keeping on reading, I think that really is what helped me improve my English. Just reading storybooks really helped me
Absolutely.
improve my English.
And for your 11th and the 12th standard, you were back in central school at IIT Madras. Your mother wanted you to join the IIT, and you were so innocent that you thought since you were studying in the IIT school, you would probably automatically go into IIT. You didn't know about the entrance exam and did not prepare for it. You were still made to sit for the exam and you failed. Now, what went through during this experience and what were the learnings from it?
Yes, so in 11th and 12th, I could see some of the classmates doing extra reading for IIT exam. I didn't really know that. I mean, I was not aware of it, and somehow, it was foolish on my part, I believe. But I just was completely unaware that there's something like an entrance exam. The way I moved from 11th to 12th, I just thought from 12th I'll just move to this college because I was inside the campus. So I somehow didn't disconnect the school and the college as individual, entities. I couldn't disconnect. I just
Yeah.
thought from here I just go there. And for all this, actually, my eldest brother was a
Mm.
chemistry teacher, and
Mm.
he and two of his colleagues in maths and physics had formed a consortium of MPC to
Mm.
teach students for preparing for entrance exam. In those days,
Right.
we didn't have all these institutional coaching classes. It was
Mm-hmm.
teachers, and typically three subjects MPC they will form together and they will form a team, and students go between them for all their things. And my brother was one of those gang of teachers, and he
Mm.
was teaching chemistry for students, and yet he also didn't tell me to prepare, and I had no idea. And my mother said I should write and join IIT Madras.
Mm.
Then I said okay, no problems. Then my brother said, if you are going to write, why don't you come for a tuition also?
That's
So
right.
I said, okay, no problem. Then he took me and joined me in his own three-member program. And I went for the first physics class taught by his friend. And the first day when I went and the kind of sums they are solving and the kind of responses the students are giving, I knew that I'll never get it. I was so far backward, so far backward. I knew that there was not a single small remote chance also. And then
Mm-hmm.
it was very close to the exam time anyway. So I told my mother, please don't put pressure on me. Let me at least read my 12th properly. She said,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to do it only. So I said, okay. And I went through all the coaching classes, but I knew that I had zero probability. And naturally, I didn't get anywhere near it. So
Right.
then I told my mother that if you're really serious about we go into IIT,
Mm-hmm.
then at least my next two brothers, you should put them into tuition from 11th itself. In those days, it was only 11th, not 6th like today. So
Mm-hmm.
I told her, put them into tuition from 11th. And
Right.
so she did do that. And actually, both of them went into IIT Madras at some points, in their life.
This is fascinating because you placated your mother by saying the family should prepare your two younger brothers well in advance so that they would fulfill your mother's dream of getting into IIT. And finally, both of them got into IIT Madras and did well. So I believe one of them is in Singapore and the other is in the US now.
True, true, true.
Right, and your elder brother, who you just mentioned, who was a chemistry professor at the Guru Nanak College, helped you to get admitted to the MJN College to do BSc Physics. But you had no clue by then what you wanted to do in life. So those days, you did, mostly students did what they were told. And after graduation, you did not know what you were supposed to do. How did CS happen? And because one of your brothers was pursuing a CA course, so was he an influence? And and eventually, this is what led you to become finally what you did in life as a professional banker, and with a remarkable field of contribution across the universe of finance.
Yes, so after college, I mean, I went and did BSc Physics without any idea why I'm doing that because my eldest brother was chemistry, my second brother was maths. So he said, take
Mm,
physics. So I said, okay, fine, I'll take physics. And I went through it. I think I got some decent mark in BSc also. I think it
mm,
was around 92% or something. We just study, isn't it? In those days, we never question anybody, why should I study or something? Our job is to study, so we'll just study. That's how we
right.
were in those days. But I really didn't understand much of what it was. And
Mm,
then after the exam, after the degree, I asked my brother, what should I do now? He
mm,
said, I am a professor. The second brother is a chartered accountant. Why don't you become a company secretary?
right.
I had not even heard of that till then. I said, okay, no problem. You tell me what I should do. So he took me to the ACS Institute Tamil Nadu chapter and the Southern India chapter, and then he enrolled me there. And then they gave me a set of books for study material. When I brought them home and I started reading, that was the first time I think in my life that studies was really something which was interesting to me, something I could connect
Right.
when I was studying law and all the legal papers, the Contract Act, the Companies Act, and all that. So that was the first time I think I could really connect to what I was studying, and it was very interesting. I was very fascinated, and so I really took it up very strongly from there on.
And you as you said, you were really happy. You it was company law, and law to you was very, very interesting. You felt highly motivated to study. And I understand before the intermediate exam, the institute conducted a mock test. Those who scored the first three places mock exam got their tuition fee refunded. You did very well in the mock exam and came within the first three. Your tuition fee was refunded. You were on top of the world, and soon after, you appeared for the actual exam. But there was a shock waiting for you. Can you run us through this experience?
Yeah, so the mock exam that the institute conducted, I was within the top three, so my fees was actually refunded. And then the exam came, and I wrote the exam. I had written only one group. There are two groups in intern. I was only preparing for one group because within 6 months of graduation, you can write only one group. So I was
Mm,
writing within the first 6 months of my graduation. So I took that first group. And when the result date came, so I took one bag from my mother and I took some money from her, telling her that I'll go to the institute, check the results, and on the way I'll buy some sweets and come. So she
mm,
gave me a bag to bring the sweets and also some cash. And then I went to the institute, and in those days, obviously, you go to the institute to check your marks. There is no internet. So
Right.
I went there and I looked at the notice board, and lo and behold, my number was not there. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. I kept looking and looking and looking, and it just didn't exist. And
Yeah.
then finally it sank that I have failed. And it was an extremely difficult thing to take, and I was totally not expect. I mean, it was completely unexpected. And then I came home and then said I have failed. And for a week, I think I was knocked out, absolutely
Right.
knocked out. I didn't do anything at all. I used to just wake up and sit in a corner. I'll not take bath. I'll not eat
Yeah,
much. I'll
yeah.
not go anywhere. I'll just sit in that corner for the entire 1 week.
Mm.
The world had crashed around me. And
Yeah.
then finally I got
So,
out of that.
so you could not understand what went wrong. You were obviously devastated. Now, you were unable to digest this failure. So you, as you said, you sat in a dark corner of the house for 7 days without moving. You slept there, ate there, but did not come out. Eventually, you told your father that you wanted to work. Is this how stenography happened?
Yeah, so stenography was something I had learned in my school days itself. Again, it's a very fascinating subject, stenography and typing. Both
Mm.
are fascinating, and somehow I had a lot of fascination for that. So it was an hobby for me. So in school and the early part of my college, I had completed high speed and shorthand. High speed is the 120 words per minute. Then
Right.
there is a special exams for stenographers beyond 120 words per minute, up to
Mm.
250 words. That's the maximum test that is available in India. So
Right.
I wanted to do all the 250. So I went on to 150. I passed. Then 180. I passed. Then 210. 210 was the next speed. I wrote 210 and I was preparing for 220. But 210 I failed.
Mm.
So I wrote the 210 again, and that next time I passed. But then the interest I lost. So I stopped at 210. And in typing, so 67.5 words per minute to the max test available.
That's
So I
right.
had cleared that. But this was just done as a hobby. But when the scenario happened, and I told my father, "Let me go to work. I can't bear this any longer. That I sit at home, study, and fail. So let me
Right.
work and study parallelly." Then the stenography came well in hand. So I applied for a stenography position in a medical company. It was part of some Modi group. In those days there used to be a group called Modi group.
Win Medicare, was it Win Medicare where you use your stenography skills to get a job at the as a regional manager to the regional manager?
That's right. It was Win Medicare. So I got a job as a stenotypist to the regional manager, and that was my first job. So it was, and it was very nice because I learned a lot about how letters are drafted, how business are conducted, how reviews are done. Because he was my
Yeah.
regional manager, he was handling all of South. So all the the state level managers and all that used to report to him. So there used to be a lot of daily sales reports and monthly analysis and all that. So I was involved in all that. It was very interesting to see how businesses are actually done.
Right. And meanwhile, you wrote your ACS exam again and passed the intermediate. Before the final exam, you were required to have work experience as a management trainee, and those are the rules, the ACS Institute rules. You got the role as a management trainee at Cholamandalam Investment and Finance, which is part of the Murugappa Group in Chennai, and I think believe that was in 1986. When your final exams approached, you took 3 months leave from office and studied very hard. This time you cleared all the three groups together in the first attempt and came All India third. Yet, you did not celebrate. Why?
Yes. So I was preparing for the exam. The Chola was very kind to give me a good 3 months leave to prepare. Uh,
Hmm.
Very nice of them. So I used to sit and study for about 16 hours a day, and prepare really hard. But
Hmm.
through that entire 3 months preparation, the thought that was going on in my mind is that the result is not in my hands. It's
Hmm.
really not in my hands. I can as easily fail as pass, because these are things where what you do alone is not enough. It's also comparative to what others are doing. And if there are a lot of people who do better than you, then you come at a level where you end up failing, because the institutes have a quota and they don't want beyond a certain cutoff, they don't let everybody pass. So I knew that it was not in my hands, whatever I was working on. And so this thing was constant in my mind, that what will I do if I fail? What will I do? Will I go into one more depression, or will I be able to continue my life as normal? So the thought of failure was so high in me that finally, when I when I went to the institute and checked my results, I only looked at first group. My number was not there. Then I looked at the second group. It was again not there. Then I looked at the third group. It was also not there. So then I thought, oh my gosh, I seem to have failed in all the groups. Then I went slightly up, all the groups together. There's a portion where they say all the groups together. I went and looked there without too much hope. And then suddenly my number was there. So I realized that I have passed all the three groups. But for a few seconds, I thought I failed all the three because it was not there in any.
So after the results, when you came back home and told your mother, and and since you did not want to celebrate because of the fear of failure, as you said, you must have been quite quiet and somber at home. So how did your mother respond? I mean, did your mother think that you had failed again? And when you told her that the actual results, how did she respond to it?
So I used to go by cycle to office in those days. So as usual, I went from the station. I went home in my cycle. I parked the cycle on the side, and then I came in. Then I changed my dress, washed my face, and all that, and then sat down for dinner. I didn't say anything to anybody. And my mother also did not ask me because she must have probably thought that I failed again. That's why I'm not saying anything. So she didn't ask anything. She gave me food. And then after I finished eating, then she asked, Enadachi, what happened? Then I said, I have passed. And she said, what? I said, yes, I have passed. Then she said, but why didn't you not tell as soon as you came? I said, I don't know why. It just didn't feel like, such a great thing. And then, of course, they were all very happy. But frankly, somehow, I never felt that joy, which maybe I should have. I don't know. But it just, and I think from that to today, I don't think I really am a person who celebrates. I don't stand in the way of others celebrating. I encourage, I motivate them to celebrate. I'm not saying that that's wrong. But I think internally for me, whatever I do, whatever happens, it just does just one more thing. And I say, okay, fine, next what? Rather than saying, wow, great. So I think this ability to celebrate, I think, went away in that first failure.
Tell us something about your Cholamandalam years. While working with Cholamandalam Finance, you enrolled as an evening scholar for BL in Madras Law College. You then, by 1989, you had become a full-fledged lawyer. Tell us something about your experience in Cholamandalam Finance, because the company had corporate customers who had defaulted in far-flung areas such as Dhanbad and Asansol, and you had to travel to all these areas, met defaulters, and convince them courteously, of course, and pleading as well as by showing them legal repercussions. Take us through your Chola years.
Yes, so Chola, so I joined as a management trainee. It was a 1-year contract. At the end of 1 year, I was supposed to leave Chola. But luckily for me, the assistant company secretary resigned just around that time, and I had also cleared the exams. So the company secretary asked me whether I would like to continue in the company as an assistant secretary. I said, why not? I'll be more than happy. So I became the assistant secretary. Then I was that for about 2 years, 80 till 88. Then in 89, the company secretary resigned. And the managing director asked me whether I would like to become the company secretary. Obviously, I jumped at it. And so I became the company secretary. And by then I had completed my law. So I was also given a lot of legal work of recoveries. Chola used to do corporate loans in those days. Only corporate. There was no retail in Chola in 80s. So a lot of corporate defaulters in different parts of the country. So I was assigned the legal recovery. So I used to go and, travel to all parts of the country to talk to people and recover the money. And I remember, I used to travel to Asansals and Dhanbads of the world. As soon as you get down in the station in Asansol, your entire dress will become black coated because there's so much of coal flying all over the place.
Yes, that's right. Sorry to interrupt, sir, but these were very dangerous areas controlled by the mining mafia. Weren't you scared?
See, one is that I'm a very, teeny kind of a character. I'm not a very strongly. And second thing is that my Hindi is pathetic. pathetic to the core. I can't really speak well in Hindi. I know about 10, 20 words. I manage with that.
Yeah.
So when you go to a place like Asansol and Dhanbad, it's really a mafia-driven market, and coal mine mafia. All that is supposed to be very strong there. And I'm going into the coal mine, not even in the city. The coal mines are typically about 40, 50-kilometer drive outside the city. And then there it is like a full kingdom of someone there, because no one else generally can come inside that coal mines. And I had to go to that coal mine, talk to that owner, and pressurize him, threaten him or whatever to make him either pay or surrender his poclanes or surrender his cranes or something like that. And
Right.
I weighed all of some 60, 70 kg. And those guys used to weigh nothing less than 100. They can probably take me and bury me underground and nobody would ever know about it. So it was very interesting. It was a mental game for me. When I used to start my travel from Chennai, I used to say in my mind, what should happen so that when I come back, I will be happy. So I will define that outcome for myself. And then when I'm there in the mines with the owners, I used to say, this is what I want from this guy. How do I get this from this guy? I can't threaten him. I can't shout. I can't put pressure. I know that. So what else can I do so that he does what I want him to do? So it was always like a mental game, mental challenge and mental game, in those days.
So looking back, do you think this was a great learning experience and also honed your legal and negotiating skills?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think it helped me to, talk to people far bigger than you or far stronger than you and still get what you want by just staying focused on what you want. And then going extremely well prepared. You have to be well prepared in any negotiation or any discussion or any transaction. You have to go really well prepared. You have to know what the other fellow will want from you and what you want from them. And if this is what you want from them, what is it that you should say and do so that at the end of it, you get what you want. So I think that whole power of negotiation, discussion, dialogue with people who are not under your control, that really helped a lot.
Right. And around that time, Cholamandalam was also starting a vehicle finance division. You were asked to be the business head of this division. You were completely new to this subject. How did you build the vehicle finance division and business from scratch?
So Anandan was the MD of Chola in those days, and I went and told Mr. Anandan that I am in Chola. I'm only getting exposure on Companies Act, but as a company secretary, I would love to have an exposure on, say, excise, customs, and all that. So can he recommend me to another group company, which is a manufacturing company, where as a company secretary you get exposure to other, other laws. Then it was he who suggested, do you really want to do that, or would you like to come into business? So I said, what business? He said, we are starting this vehicle finance. So if you are okay, why don't you start this vehicle finance for Chola? I said, but I don't know anything about financing or vehicles or anything. He said, yeah, but that's okay. If you are willing to learn, I'm willing to help. I said, okay, if you are willing to take the risk, then who am I to say no? And I jumped at it. And that's how I got into vehicle finance suddenly, leaving the entire company secretary and legal profession behind me. I started the vehicle finance, and we put up the first 3 branches, I remember. And my first branch manager in Chennai, a person called Israel, was a thorough master in vehicle finance. He was already there in that market. He knew a lot of people. He knew the business. So he became my mentor and guide, actually, though he was my branch manager. But I learned a lot from him. And I just used to say that, Israel, you take me to the dealer, take me to the customer and tell me how the whole thing is done, teach me how it is done and all that. And he used to take me on his bike and actually teach me what vehicle finance is all about. And in return for his teaching me, my contribution to him was the office related issues. I made the processing of application easier, documenting easier. So all those things, that is my forte. My ability to manage the admin part of it was my forte. So I made his life easy as a sales guy so that he could spend more time on the field, and he taught me everything on the field.
Absolutely. And your departure from Cholamandalam is also in hindsight may have been also another turning point in your career. Chola wanted to have a joint venture with DBS Bank Singapore. You were asked to head the joint venture, and you did all the work to set it up. You were taken to Singapore and introduced as the CEO of the new venture. However, when the operations were about to begin, the joint venture partner wanted someone from their side to be the CEO. Probably they wanted you to accept a lower role, which you were not prepared for. And is that the reason you left Cholamandalam after 20 years of long association?
Yeah, Chola was like my home. I mean, not even for 1 minute in the 20 years I ever thought I will leave Chola. Not even 1 minute, not even once. It was like my home. Just get up in the
Mm.
morning and like the way you brush without thinking, I'll just
Yeah,
walk into Chola without thinking. It was
yeah.
as comfy as that for me. And
Mm.
Chola and the Murugappa group are really good places for professionals to work. Seriously good
Mm.
places. There's a lot of respect for professional, lot of space given, and we are allowed to do so much of independent work there and all that. And I think even today it continues. You see in Murugappa group, most of the senior managers would end up retiring. They hardly ever leave. That's the kind of culture that we have in the Murugappa group and the Chola in particular.
Mm.
So I really enjoyed all my entire 20 years, and out of my 20 years, I think 17, 18 years was under Mr. Anandan as my boss. And so he used to take care of my career, everything. I never bothered about my promotions or increments or anything. I never bothered. Even once, I never bothered about it because he always took care of it, everything.
Mm.
My job was only to just work and deliver. And
Right.
and then we went into this trial with DBS Bank. It was a equal joint venture. Murugappa Group had 75% in Chola. Then they sold 37.5% to DBS. So they became
Mm.
equal partner joint venture company. And yes, I was by then I was already heading the company Chola, all functions. I was a CEO. I was not designated CEO at the time, but all functions are reporting to me, and I was about to be designated as CEO of the company. That was the situation.
Mm.
And then DBS Bank came for the first board meeting, and then they said they wanted somebody from their end to be the CEO, not from the group's side. And
Mm.
unfortunately, the group couldn't really, kind of protest or whatever. They couldn't really do much about that. And then Mr. Alagappan, I met and asked him what is to be done. He said, "What can I do? They really want to run the company, and
Mm.
I really don't have a choice."
Mm.
And then the position they offered me was something ridiculous. I was the CEO. I was handling the entire company, all the business and collections and operations, IT, finance, treasury, secretary, everything was under me. From
Mm.
there, they wanted me to move into a sales head for vehicle finance, where even collections won't report to me. Forget anything
Mm.
else. I mean, obviously, they must have known that nobody can really take it. So maybe whatever it is. So I had to leave. So I finally had to take the call to leave. And then I told Mr. Anandan that, there's really no choice. So I'll have to go. And he said, yeah, I think you have to go. There's really nothing we can do for you here.
So it must have been heartbreaking. And after a 20-year long association, you joined DCB Bank at Mumbai as the head of consumer banking. And this is interesting because it must have been a challenging work experience for you because so far you had dealt only with assets, but now you were dealing with both assets and liabilities. How was this experience?
Yes, so I got an offer in DCB Bank in Bombay. So we shifted family to Bombay, and
Mm.
it was a combination of asset and liability. For the first time, I was knowing about liabilities. We had 72 branches in DCB at that point in time.
Mm.
But I had a good liability head. So there's a good guy who was a very well experienced banker who was heading my liabilities. So again, like in vehicles, I used to lean on him and learn from him what liability is all about and how do you go around mobilizing CASA, TD, and selling
Mm.
third party, products and things like that. So I used to really learn from him. And then I had a person called Anthony who was heading my third party distribution. So through him, I used to learn about the entire third party distribution products and all that. And my boss, Gautam, he himself was a thoroughbred banker and he was a very strong liability guy. So I used to learn a lot from him on the liability part of the business. And so he used to be very, he was from Citibank background and very
Mm.
strong on liability. So I used to learn a lot from him on the entire liability part of it. For example, I learned, I mean, he was the one who told me that, when an account, when there's a debit in a savings account or a current account, then as a banker, we have to see where is the money going and chase the money to the destination account. And if that destination account is not in our bank, but in a different bank, then we have to reach out to our customer and ask him, why has he made this payment to someone whose bank account is elsewhere? And then he introduces us to that person. And then we go to that person and say that I have so referred us to you. Can you open an account with us? So you chase money wherever it goes. And that's what liability is all about. Never leave the trail of money out of your sight. So a lot of things used to reach me.
Interesting. And these are fascinating insights. But you had to move back to Chennai under different circumstances because in Mumbai, which was Bombay then, your daughter was about 2 years old and was constantly falling sick. She could not bear the pollution of Mumbai, and doctors told you to take her back to Chennai. How difficult a decision was this?
Yes, so she started developing bronchitis. That's the final report that we got from the doctor. And the doctor said, you have to shift now, otherwise she can become a permanent problem for her. So we really had no choice. So initially the plan was that my wife and daughter will move down to Chennai. I will still continue in Bombay. And, so that's the initial thought. And so we got an admission for my daughter here in a play school because she was, I think, 3 years old at that time. So we got an admission in a play school near our house in Chennai. Our house was anyway retained in Chennai, so that was not an issue. So we got an admission, and all preparations were on to move my wife and daughter back to Chennai, me staying there. But when it came closer to that time, then both of us were uncomfortable with this thought that I'll sit there and she'll be sitting here. And then we said, what's the point of doing this kind of stuff? We might as well just find a job in Chennai and get back and be together. So finally, we took that call very close to the date of shifting. And so that's it. We just packed up and came back to Chennai with nothing on hand for me at that time. But we just shifted.
So you relocated to Chennai and you didn't have any job. In Chennai, your options were limited. Probably you could not go back to Cholamandalam. You didn't want to join a bank at the regional level, as that could have been some kind of, you were already working at far higher levels. And if you had joined at the regional level, you may have been forced to work under some of your earlier juniors. Is this how microfinance happened, and was it how difficult were those days, and how did microfinance come about?
Yes, so I really had not much of a choice from Chennai, and then I was wondering what to do. And that's the time when microfinance was in the news for all the right reasons of how as a process it helps the poor people to come out of poverty and uplift their life and all that. A lot of articles used to come on microfinance in those days in 2006 and 7. And I remember somewhere in 2003-4 when I used to be in Chola, Nachiket Moore, who was then the executive director or DMD of ICICI Bank, he had come to Chola once and to make a presentation on microfinance and why Chola should get into that. So I had some brief exposure to microfinance because of Mr. Nachiket Moore, but then we didn't do much in Chola about that, so that got dropped out. So in 2006-7, there's a lot of articles on microfinance and its good effect and all that. So then I thought, why not we do something in microfinance? And so what I did is I started collecting data of microfinance companies as well as some consultants who are operating in that space. And then I thought, which is a company where I should try to seek some, job opportunities. So that's how the whole thing started.
The idea of setting up MFI germinated in your mind during those days. But I understand the two people who were instrumental in you becoming an entrepreneur are Sandeep Farias of Unitas, Bengaluru, and Sarah Jari of IFMR, Chennai. Both of them suggested that you start an MFI yourself instead of working in one. And they promised all the help in setting up the new venture pro bono. So how did the new microfinance institution come about?
Yes, so I met Sandeep Farias of Unitas in Bangalore, and then I told him, this is my background and I'm looking for a job based out of Chennai. Then he suggested, why should you look for a job? Why don't you start a microfinance company? I said, how can I start? I don't have money and all that. I'm just a normal employee, professional employee. Then he said, no, 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 you please think about it. I'll give you all the contacts in the MFA industry. You can study it and then tell me, why you can't start something yourself. Then one of the names he gave me was Sara Jari from IFMR Trust in Chennai. So I met her. And she also said the same thing. She said, you should start a MFA of your own. And I remember she went to the board and made a lot of drawings on the board to say what microfinance is all about, how it works. And if you start a company, what can be done. And these two people are really instrumental in seeding this thought into my mind that, I can actually start a company of my own. And, Sandeep, of course, I'm still very closely in touch. But Sara Jari, she moved away to Swiss and I lost contact. But, I'll forever remain indebted to both of them because they are the ones who actually started me on this whole journey.
It's interesting because both of them were competitors, yet they gave you all the relevant information. And in today's age, you cannot imagine people sharing their knowledge with a competitor. That's interesting. But tell us more about your experience with meeting the poor, because setting up an MFI gave you the opportunity to meet the poor, and you were meeting really poor people and getting to know them, how they live, the level of challenges that they faced in spite of every difficulty. Importantly, how they kept smiling, and that is something that remains so very true of everywhere in India. Did you find microfinance as a very useful product for the borrowers given their high cost alternate options?
Yes, so I went to some of the MFI companies and they actually, very surprisingly, they were happy to help me understand the whole business, even though they knew that someday I'm wanting to start something on my own.
Right.
Because MFI in those days was like that, very accommodative, I would say. And so they took me to the field in Chennai, I remember, in Ashok Nagar. Ashok Nagar is in Chennai, one of the posh areas. So they took me to Ashok Nagar. And then as we were, I was on the bike of, I was sitting on the bike of some sales and field staff of that MFI company. And from the main road, he suddenly in one small lane, he just took a left. And then we went into the lane and within 50 meters, 50 meters from high posh locality of Chennai, within 50 meters, I was suddenly seeing something which is dramatically opposite. Narrow roads, congested roads, open drainage, and houses which are obviously not of a very healthy standards. And it is a very different world, totally different world. All of 50 meters separates a world which is very different to the posh locality of Ashok Nagar. And then the meeting took place. Members of that group came, and a lot of light banterings and a lot of pleasantries exchanges between them and the staff. And it was all very riveting for me, riveting. Right. And then I could realize the kind of poverty that they were all living in. But at the same time, they were actually smiling and laughing.
Absolutely.
And I was so taken aback. How can someone who seems to be struggling in life so much have the ability to smile and laugh? And here we are always cribbing about what we don't have. So it was amazing experience.
And therefore, the idea of starting a most efficient and transparent company was born. Now, let me take you to your days of working from the road. You used to leave your house at 9 in the morning, carry a lunchbox, go to a bylane in any part of the city and park under a tree, take your laptop out and start to work. You had the vision of the model of a company. You wanted to create the company that you wanted to create, including raising foreign investment. You wanted to do it professionally. What were the challenges? And, if you were to do a few things differently, what would those be?
So in those early days, the only thing I had was this thought in my mind that, yes, we should start a company. And there was nothing else. And I didn't have an office, obviously. And but I didn't want to sit at home and do the work from home because you don't, I think sitting at home and all that, I think will leave you feeling depressed that, you are jobless. So you are out of job, you are jobless. So I didn't want to do that. So I wanted to just get out of the house as if I'm really going for a walk. And so I used to take a tiffin box and drive away and sit on a bylane under a tree, switch off the motor and start doing my work. And my biggest challenge in those days was, what do I do for my, going to the loo? I'm sitting on the road. I could find it. I mean, I was really not able to bring myself to just kind of, to leave on the road. So the first thing I will do when I sit in the car is fix 2 appointments. To meet anybody, one in the morning, one in the evening, fix with somebody so that I'll go to their office and I'll use their loo.
Right.
So that's how it used to be done. And and then I remember finally my chartered accountant who helped me to prepare the financial projections for the company.
Right.
His office was right next door to my office, my house. And then when he asked me where my office is, I said, I don't have an office. Then he said, why don't you use this table in my office? Just use this table till you get something of your own. So that was the first office. A table in my chartered accountant's office was my first office. And so I started from there. But even there, it was just walking distance. It was next to building actually to my house. But even then, I used to take my tiffin box and not go home for lunch because, just going home for lunch, somehow I felt will take away my focus on the business part of it, which I didn't want, even that disturbance. So it has to be from the morning till evening, it has to be just focused on what you want to do.
And so when Murli joined as a second employee of Equitas, both of you actually sat across each other at one table because no one was willing to give a place on rent to an unknown finance company. How did you go about building it from that stage?
Yes, so Murli was also in Chola long back with me. So he joined as head of HR for me. And so we used to sit at the opposite ends of a table and do some work. And even then on the first day itself, I told Murli when he joined, I want you to define what will be the culture of the company that we are going to create. So why don't you, I told him I have a meeting, I'll go and come back. But when I come back, I want to see what kind of culture do we want in the company. So why don't you put your thoughts and, let's discuss that. So that was the first official discussion about the company. It was all about culture building a culture which will be, long sustainable and, so that's the first official discussion we ever had in Equitas. And so he did that. And then as part of my effort to raise initial capital, I had met one Mr. Meghanathan, who is the owner of a college called Rajalakshmi Engineering in Chennai. So someone introduced me to him. And then he was showing a lot of interest in the company that I was proposing to start. And then he said, where's your office? I said, I don't have an office because nobody's giving me a space. Every time you say some new NBFC or new finance company, then they say, it's too risky. And nobody was willing to give. In fact, one guy agreed to give. And then he went back because he said, when I told him microfinance, he said he heard it as Microsoft. So when finally I gave him a letter in microfinance, he said, no, you told me it is Microsoft.
Let's talk about the initial help that came for your MFI venture. Initial investments came from Mr. Anandan, who was your MD at Cholamandalam, and Mr. Algappan, the then chairman of Murugappa Group, and Mr. Nandakumar of Mannapuram Finance. And you needed more capital. And as you mentioned, you were introduced to Mr. Meghnathan, the owner of Rajalakshmi Engineering College. Initially, he seemed interested, but finally, he did not invest. Why did he not invest?
I had never asked him that.
But you must have got a sense of why the investment did not come through.
Yeah, I mean, he was a nice guy. He gave me an office, fully furnished, 3,000 square feet office with AC, everything. He just gave it to me free. And when I told him I'll at least pay the electricity bill, that also he refused. He said nothing doing. He said when his father used to give his car to someone who wanted to use it, he always used to say, it seems, fill the car and give. Don't give an empty car. So he says that, so that way he didn't even take electricity bill from me. He was a very nice guy. But I think somewhere on the commercial part of it, I don't know. I mean, I really never asked him, but maybe somehow he felt that it may not yield returns for him or something like that. So he never gave me money, and I was not wanting to embarrass him by asking him why or anything. I just left it. So he didn't give me. But basically, yes, the initial funding came from Mr. Anandan, Alagappan and Nandakumar. And so we started with the company. And in those days, the minimum capital requirement was 2 crores for NBFC. But I had set myself a target of 10 crores because in India, at that point in time in 2007, there was not a single NBFC MFI which had started with a 10 crore initial capital. It was always very small. So I said, let us at least put 10 crore as a minimum benchmark. If I don't get it, I will not start it. And so finally, we were able to get that kind of money, and then we started off.
So for nearly 8 to 9 months, you enjoyed the hospitality of Mr. Megnathan in Sun Plaza, and then moved to Temple Towers.
That's right. So then finally we got an office in Temple Towers, and so we were able to move there. And yes.
And this was also around the time when more people started joining you. This is the time probably Bhaskar and Mahalingam also joined. Tell us about the role that they played in shaping this company up.
So I was reaching out to people known to me to join to see how do we create a very progressive kind of an organization. And so Bhaskar, I reached out to Bhaskar. He was in the Murugappa group. He was in Chola with me for the entire 20 years. And subsequently had moved to the group level. He was the head of tax and audit at the group level. So I reached out to him because he is a very strong finance person. I'm not that strong in finance, but he's very strong in finance, and he's very well respected and regarded as a conservative financeman. So that's an image that you want to have for a startup company, that you have a conservative CFO. So I wanted him very specifically. So I went to his house. I talked to him. He was just not convinced. And because he was sitting in a good position at a large group, and this is a small startup, and nobody knew how the startup will shape. So he was really not interested. Finally, I told him that, I wanted to take him for a field visit, and after that, he can take his call. So I again reached out to one of the other MFIs operating in Chennai, and with their help, I took Bhaskar to the field, and he saw the group meetings and the interactions and all that, and I think that really changed his mind to the whole company that we are proposing. And he probably felt that yes, this company is something that is giving so much of support to the underprivileged, and I think he wanted to be part of that journey. So I think that field visit really turned him around, and he immediately agreed to join.
A field visit that you organized for him turned him around, and he could see what the company could do for these people, and he agreed to join. And what about Mahalingam? He headed IT, and you had a vision. You had a vision of having a strong technology base for the company. So how did you convince him, and what is the contribution that he has made over the years?
So Maha was easier process. I think he just agreed. The moment I told him, he just agreed. So and he joined us, and from beginning itself, we said we will be high on tech, and our process efficiency has to be really high, because microfinance in those days was purely manual. So we said that we need to reduce our lending rate by improving our efficiency and not charging customers for our inefficiency. That's our take. And Maha was really instrumental in helping me set up a very strong technology base. And in fact, we used to invite a lot of other MFIs to our office and give them a full demo of our technology process that we had set up, so that they could also take it in their system if they so felt.
Right. Let me also ask you about the whole experience of choosing the chairman. For chairman, you wanted a man of impeccable reputation. You had jotted down a list of people in your diary, which contained names of eminent personalities such as the chairman of SAIL, Mr. Krishnamurthy, then Mr. R.C. Bhargava, who was then the chairman of Maruti. Also, I understand of Mr. T.N. Session, who was a former chief election commissioner, and probably Mr. Ramabhadran, the CMD of Indian Overseas Bank. But the name of Mr. N. Rangachari was on top. Why was that?
Yes, because of course I don't know him at all in those days personally, but he was the first chairman of IRDA, and in Chola I remember that when we applied for our license also, he was the one. It was under his signature that we got the license for insurance in Chola. And I had read a lot of articles about what a great person he was and all that. At the same time, extremely simple and very friendly kind of a person. And the entire insurance privatization rollout in India was a scam-free process. Absolutely
Right.
no scam at all.
Yeah.
And the first nearly 20 insurance company licenses were issued by Mr. Rangachari, and not a whiff of scandal, not a whiff of misdeeds or anything. Not even one whiff. So he was such a straightforward person that he was able to bring about so much of system control or process in IRDA
Yeah.
that the
Yeah.
entire privatization was a smooth process for India.
Right.
And so I then I know so I thought that somebody like him. I mean, he's like God to me. So I thought somebody like him, if he can come as a chairman, because nobody knows me, because I am an unknown entity, and I keep telling people I'm going to start a company. They laugh or whatever, they turn away. But if I can tell them that Mr. Rangachari is the chairman, suddenly they will take me seriously. Because they know that somebody like him won't just come and associate with anybody. So that's why somehow his name was something that I had put right at the top, and I was so keen
Right.
on getting him.
So one interesting piece of anecdote that I've read is that the day you put his name in the diary, your wife saw this and she realized that you were serious about setting up a company and asked you. So you were really setting up a company. Is that so?
Yes, so so in the house there was some level of protest because we are not business people. So we need a monthly salary at the end of every month to run the house, and we mentally we are not able to visualize, that end of the month salary won't come.
Yeah.
So my wife was against business because earlier in my in our family, my other brother had started a business and it went into ruin, and we lost. Actually, we were almost on the roads at some point in time. So all this was in our memory, and so there's a lot of protest against starting a business. But when I told her that Mr. Rangachari is agreed to become the chairman, and also Mr. Vaidyanathan from Integrated Enterprises, he was my neighbor he's still my neighbor in Chennai. So, and he is known to my wife as a very highly respected person again in the society. So when I told her that these two agreed to become directors of the company, that's when she finally thought that this thing is really serious. And maybe it will work probably, because if these two kind of people willing to associate, then there must be something in it.
You went to Hyderabad to meet Mr. Rangachari. He was then the financial advisor to the government of Andhra Pradesh, which was then headed by Chandrababu Naidu. And the meeting was arranged by his auditor, who kept on telling you that Mr. Rangachari would not accept your proposal. Tell us about the meeting, the experience, and how you convinced him, and help us recall that day.
So there's a person called Vasudevan by my namesake in DCB in Hyderabad. So he was reporting to me in DCB, and he's a well-connected person in Hyderabad. So I reached out to him and told him, Vasu, I need Mr. Rangachari as the chairman of my company. Can you do something about it? And his first response was, of course, no problem, sir, we'll do it. That's all. And he's always a very positive guy. And Vasu currently works in Equitas for the information.
Okay.
So anyway, then he contacted Mr. J. Balasubramaniam, who is the auditor of Mr. Rangachari. And through him, he organized a meeting. And then I flew down to Hyderabad, and then I met Mr. JB. And Mr. J. Balasubramaniam said, no, there is no way he will agree, because being on the board of companies is not that easy a cakewalk. There's a lot of risk associated with that. And so he is unlikely to agree. You're wasting your time. I said, please arrange one meeting, and after that, if it fails, no problems. So he said, okay, I am anyway going to his house now. You can just join me. So I tagged along with him. We went to his house, and he introduced me as a friend of his friend. But Mr. Rangachari didn't, there's no connect between us. So he just ignored me actually. And they were both talking away, and there's a cricket match going. So they were watching that and talking and all that. And then finally, JB said, no, he wants to talk to you about some company that is going to start, and he wants you to be the chairman of that company. Then Mr. Rangachari said, no, I'm not interested. I don't want to get into anything which is unknown and all that. Then finally, I got an opportunity to tell him what I wanted to do. Then I started talking about microfinance and its impact on the people, and the fair and transparent kind of a company that we wanted to create, and things like that. And then I also told him that Mr. Vaidyanathan, integrated, has agreed
Yeah.
to be the first director on the board.
Okay.
Then he said, "Oh, Vaidi is agreed." I see. Okay,
Mm.
then I'll also think about it. That's what he said. So later I realized that Mr. Vaidyanathan's father and Mr. Rangachari are very, very close friends. And
Okay.
so he knows their family well. And
Mm.
so he thought that if Vaidi is agreed, then okay, maybe this boy is not that bad. So finally he agreed. And after I came back to Chennai, Mr. Jay Balasubramanian called me and said Rangachari has agreed.
Yeah.
So I mean, it
So
was ecstatic for me.
right. So you got a while going. You returned to Chennai thinking it was going to be a no from Mr. Rangachari, and while going home from the airport, you got a call from the auditor saying Rangachari had agreed. Is it something? It was the Vaidyanathan's appointment and the fact that Mr. Vaidyanathan agreed to become the director on your board, on the company's board, a clincher for Mr. Rangachari, because Mr. Rangachari probably trusted Mr. Vaidyanathan's wisdom.
That's right. Absolutely. Totally.
And so when he decided to take over as the chairman of your company, what happened next, and what are the things that he told you, and what are the advices that he gave you, probably made you change things a bit here and there in terms of strategic vision?
So I had a discussion with him. I went to Hyderabad again after he agreed. I went to
Mm.
Hyderabad again and then had a detailed discussion about the whole company, formation, philosophy,
Yeah.
purpose, everything. And also to give him some background about myself and what we are planning and all that.
Mm.
And so I told him that I needed his help in setting up a company with the highest standards of governance.
Mm.
And so that's what I asked him, and he said, "Okay, we will do it," and all that.
Mm.
And then over the next few months, he really helped me form the board. Get the right kind of people on joining the board, and then we also set up. In fact, beginning almost at the starting point of the company itself, we set up a committee of the board on governance. So we had a governance committee of the board.
Mm. Mm.
So, I mean, we are not, forget being listed. We are just a small newborn company, forget
Mm.
listing and all that.
Mm.
But we took governance so seriously that we formed a separate committee of the board on governance to oversee the governance in the company.
Mm.
And then within 2 years, we went and applied to CRISIL for a governance rating also.
Right.
And we were the seventh highest governance rated company in the country at that time in 2010.
Right.
So he was very instrumental in setting up the governance framework and the structure for the company, and ensuring that it runs very deep in the system right from day one.
Right, absolutely. Let me take you to the first international recognition for you when the IFC invited an arm of the World Bank invited you to speak. It was organizing a conference in Washington, and they invited you to speak on how you were able to lower the interest rates of microfinance in India. Tell us about the experience. How did you combine the goals of social development with the company making a profit? How could the two be reconciled?
Yeah. So obviously you need to make profits to sustain and be alive. But at the same time, the desire from our side was to see how do we do it at a more sustainable manner for the borrowers.
Right.
And the interest rates in those days when we started the company, the interest rates used to be anywhere between 35 to 60%.
Right.
That are the interest rates. So we did our own projections, financial projections for a 5-year period, and tried to project a certain level of growth, and also built in certain operating efficiencies into the projections, and then said that finally, if we can operate at this scale and at this level of efficiency, and we still need to make decent returns on the capital, then what's the lending rate that we should have? And
Absolutely.
through that combo, we reached finally a lending rate of 25.5%, including processing fees. And so the first rate that we rolled out was 25.5. When the market was between 35 to 60%.
Right.
And also, we were the first MFI in the world to disclose our actual reducing balance all-inclusive interest rate to the customer by printing it in the loan passbook. And
Mm.
an organization called mftransparency.org, which
Right, right. I was just coming to that. I think it was in 2009, within a year of starting Equitas, when you received the pleasant surprise by the way of an email from mftransparency.org. It's an organization set up by Nobel laureate Professor Muhammad Yunus, which declared Equitas as the most transparent MFI globally. What did it mean for you and the rest of the company?
Yeah, so it was really an acknowledgement of what we wanted to do from the beginning, which is that the word equitas. Equitas is a Latin word which means equitable, which means being
Yeah.
fair and transparent. So everything that we do in Equitas has to be fair and completely transparent. So that's the clear mandate we set from the day one. And so this recognition from MF Transparency was one more confirmation that we were on the right track. And so we just wanted to continue and keep doing more of that, so that we distinguish and set a clear benchmark, on those parameters.
But did this recognition also bring along some criticism? Because there were some people and some points of view that emerged during that time which said that you were growing, Equitas was growing because you were lending left, right, and center. You were overlending and so on. How did you respond to this criticism?
See, in Tamil Nadu in those days when we started, there was no organized NBFC MFI operating in Tamil Nadu. It was largely the small NGO MFIs. And this NGO MFIs, typically they have a problem in raising money from the banks because of various reasons. So their growth was also always very small. Even though they were operating for years together, they were very small. And when we started, it was a very professional company, and we went to a private equity right from day one. So we were able to raise a lot of capital, and bank loans kept coming. So we were actually growing in Tamil Nadu much faster than the older NGOs. And so we knew that there will be a lot of angst created in their mind about whether we will be taking away their share or will be treading on their feet and things like that. So I reached out to all the NGO MFIs from day one, trying to build a personal relationship with them and rapport with them to assuage that we are not here to hurt or harm anybody. And if there is any reason that they felt that they are being hurt by us, then we will definitely take corrective measures so that we don't. Our intent is not that. So we did do a lot of activities on that.
Right.
There's one thing, which is that the goal of most of the MFIs in those days, forget today, but in those days, the goal of most MFIs were to help uplift the poor from poverty. That was the goal of almost all MFIs. But the way they were going about is, there's one more unsaid element in that statement: to uplift the poor from poverty by me. By me. That by me was an unsaid statement. So
That's right.
suppose you come and uplift somebody from poverty, I should still be happy because my mission is served.
Right.
But I'm unhappy. Why am I unhappy? Because it's not done by me.
That's right.
I think that one small unsaid element was very starkly there in everybody's mind. So we didn't want to trample on anybody. I mean, I don't see, if you are helping somebody, I don't have to go and help the same guy. There's so many people who need help. Why not we go and focus elsewhere?
Absolutely.
So we tried our best to ensure that we created a harmonious relation. At least I personally traveled all over Tamil Nadu and met every single NGO and created a rapport with them at a personal level.
And you also, let me also bring you to the formation of a credit bureau. Within 10 months of Equitas starting its operations, you suggested formation of a company that could manage the lending data and act like a credit bureau. This was, in your view, important because there was mistrust. How did you bring this about?
Yes, so actually within 2 months of starting Equitas, we called a meeting of all the MFI, including NGO MFIs operating in Tamil Nadu. We called for a meeting and they all came. And I used SIDBI because SIDBI was one common funder to everybody. So SIDBI had a lot of voice in the industry. So I talked to SIDBI and asked them whether they would help me in this process of consolidating borrower data so that we don't overlend not knowing that someone else has lent to that same person. So SIDBI was very happy. So under their flag, under their aegis, we called meeting of all MFIs in Tamil Nadu within 2 months of Equitas starting operations. And then we started doing some work in Tamil Nadu. And then I reached out to Vijay Mahajan, who was running basics in Hyderabad in those days. And Brish Mohan, who was a former ED of SIDBI. So I reached out to them and told them that I'm trying to do something like this in TN, but is there something that they would like to do at an all India level? So they said, yeah, why not? You start the process, we'll all support you. So on I remember on 1st October 2008, I sent out a mail to all the MFIs, NBFC MFIs operating in India, saying that, Mr. Vijay Mahajan and Brish Mohan Saab has agreed to support a process of consolidating database of borrowers in the industry so that we can try and prevent over lending and over borrowing. And then we had our first meeting in Delhi in the December of 2008, where all the MFIs met. And that is where the journey of starting credit bureau came. Then we reached out to RBI. RBI said, no, we already given license to 4 entities to start credit bureau in India. I don't want to give one more license. So you work with any one of the 4. And so Vijay Mahajan said, let's work with Highmark because they seem to be the most hungry for business. So we tied up with Highmark and we did a lot of joint working with Highmark to make Highmark a very strong credit bureau for the MFI industry.
Right. In fact, the MFIN guidelines were stricter than RBI. So you must be very proud of your early association with MFIN because today MFIN is a very strong organization.
Yes. So Vijay Mahajan was the instrumental force behind all the MFIs coming together long before, it was required or mandated by RBI. And then, so Vijay Mahajan became the first, chairman of MFIN. And I was the first vice chairman of MFIN to help him. And we kept organizing meetings of all the MFIs. And we thrashed out a code of conduct for all the MFIs. Which was finally more stringent than finally in 2011 when RBI came with a set of guidelines. Our code of conduct was actually even stricter than that. So we drew out a code of conduct. We tried to implement that, and we put a disciplinary action committee of MFIN. We created all complaints of transgression on code of conduct. We used to pump into that committee, and the committee will call the people. And the board was very, very active in those days. The board of MFIN was very active. We used to call the MFIs and tell them they can't do this kind of transgression. They have to stop. And if they don't stop, we will write to RBI saying that we are removing you from MFIN because you are not willing to follow the code of conduct. So we used to be very tough and strict in those days. And I think it really helped a lot at those stage.
You are also highly influenced by the basics model, which you hold in very high regard. You went to Andhra for a 3-day visit to basics, which was founded by Vijay Mahajan. How do you describe this exposure? Because the basics, you believe that the basics model was excellent, and it's a very good model.
Yes, so Vijay Mahajan's basics, they had a program of 3 days once a quarter, but they were willing to invite any external person to go through their entire program. So I enrolled and joined and went. I didn't know Vijay at that time. So I just enrolled through the website. And then they took us to the field, and we had a good 2-day field visit. We went and met the branch managers, field staff, groups, villages, everywhere. And also they explained about the basics triad model. Triad model is a triangle model where they have one end of the triangle is financial support, the other end is livelihood support, and the third is health and education support. So they formed this 3 support system, and then they said that their whole philosophy of basics was that just giving money alone is not enough. We need to also see how to help them use that money properly through a livelihood support program, and also form a producer consortium, consumer consortium to help them negotiate better with various stakeholders, and also see what can we do on their health part of it to make them. In fact, Vijay Mahajan used to keep saying that, if a poor person, takes a loan and uses that money to buy food, that loan should be treated as private sector for banks, Because when you give money to a company to maintain its machinery, it's called a private sector loan. And
That's
here,
right.
the person's body is the machinery, which is the livelihood producing machinery for the family. If that body is to be maintained, that should be private sector. That's how his thinking used to go in those days. So it was an excellent model. And when I went to the branches, the branch managers used to show me that they're teaching people on a variety of skills. And then agriculture, they used to teach people on better methods of agriculture to improve productivity, etc. But the only thing I felt in that model, which was a little weak, was that the same person was giving loans and also doing other work. And I felt that it's not a scalable model because it's difficult to get large number of people who will be highly skilled both in financial matters as well as in non-financial matters.
Vasu, let me bring you now to the, your most recent success story, which is becoming a bank. In 2015, RBI invited applications from well-run MFIs to apply to become a small bank. 10 of you got selected. Tell us about this. Run us through how it happened, the experience, and how it, how setting up this institution and the evolution of Equitas as a small finance bank and probably eventually as a scheduled commercial bank later.
Yes, so we were one of the 10 license allottees, and in fact, we were the second to go live as an SFB after Capital SFB, which from Chandigarh. They were a cooperative bank, so it was easier for them because they already had the system for handling savings, current account, etc. So they went live, I think, about 6 months prior to us, and then we went live. So when we got the license itself, we took a call that within 2 months of becoming a bank, we should repay all our existing bank loans, which are obviously at a rate higher than what a bank can borrow. And so we consciously worked towards, getting that process in place. And when we did finally become a bank, within 2 months, we actually ended up paying the entire bank loans and settled it out. So that's something that happened. And we set up initially, or we decided to set up 350 liability branches besides the existing asset offices that we used to have. And so we went about creating that. It was a big learning. It was, even though I did have some small stint in DCB bank on the liability side, but it's still a major learning for me as well as for the entire system. We had no knowledge on liability and banking. So it was a big learning and a lot of learning curve we had to go through finally to get it off the ground.
So that was the question I was actually coming to. How different structurally and from a mindset and philosophy approach point of view is running an MFI as against running a bank, because bank is a very complex structure organizationally, and also the guidelines are very different. You're bound by various rules and regulations. There are capital adequacy requirements, and there are asset liability requirements, there are ALCO meetings, there are interest rate fixation, etc., etc. How difficult was it initially as to make the transition?
So yeah, it was a major challenge. But within RBI, they had set up one small division to help the SFBs, kind of fall into place. So we used to lean on those teams in RBI also. They used to give us a lot of guidance on the compliance and regulatory framework thing, because we had really no idea which rules of RBI apply to us. We had zero idea. So they did set up a team in RBI, and that team really worked closely with us to help all of us understand exactly what we are supposed to do as a small finance bank. And yes, you are right. Running a bank is not comparable to running an NBFC at all. An NBFC is still a very narrow focused entity, whereas the bank is just too broad based, impossibly broad based. And the risk levels of a bank are incomparable to that of an NBFC. And obviously, the opportunities are also incomparable. The bank is obviously a lot more opportunities for a bank compared to an NBFC. And I think it's a journey that is the culmination of starting as an NBFC. As I used to say in those days, an NBFC is like a bachelorhood. Bachelorhood is fantastic. It's very flexible, a lot of freedom. You enjoy everything. But at the end of the day, that's not life. Finally, you have to get married. and with
Wonderful
all the
analogy.
pulls and pressures of married life, but still that's a final goal that one has to go through to feel
Right,
fulfillment. And so the bank is like that. There's a lot of pulls and pressures of a bank.
right. You must have gone through very anxious moments in the running of the bank. Give us a few anecdotes from these.
Um, the first was actually getting compliance person in place because
Mhm.
we are Chennai based. So Chennai based, the natural talent of banking skill talent in Chennai is not available naturally. It's all towards
Mumbai.
Bombay,
Yeah.
Mumbai. So getting talent itself was a big challenge in Chennai.
Mm.
And especially talent from the lending side, we don't have an issue because there's so many NBOCs, so we could always get talent.
Mm.
But on the liability side, it was not very easy.
Mm.
And from the controls perspective, like compliance on risk, we really had a challenge. And so we had to hire temporary, retired bankers on a contract basis to run our compliance on risk for some time before we
Mm.
could actually get proper employees to join. And
Mm.
it was a major challenge. And at some point, initially, I didn't know much. So I was actually quite relaxed. But the
Mm.
more I started understanding about compliance, then the worries really started deep. Then I knew that we are so far away from being high on compliance that worry started growing very, very deep at some point in time. And then we had to do a lot of work. And the compliance head who joined us as a first permanent employee, who is still there. So he really put a lot of structures in place to bring about governance structure on compliance. And I think the journey really started there. But there are a lot of sleepless moments I used to have on that.
I can well imagine that because running a bank is far, far, far more complex than running an MBSC, as you said. There are also issues of on the assets, both on the assets and the liability sides. But a modern day banking has got to do as much with technology as it has got to do with financial management. How did you go about fixing the tech piece? Because modern day banking is so digital that it's also on your palm tops, and which is something that you probably didn't get to do on such a scale while running an MFI.
Yes, the investment in IT was like mind blowing as a bank. I mean, what we could have probably invested in 10 years in an NBOC, we invested in the first year of the bank. And it was
Right.
mind blowing. And there's really no control. I mean, I was not in control. It just kept going all over the place. And people used to say, we
Mm.
need this, we need that. And it just kept going. That's it. There was no role that I had to play at all in that. It was all just minimum requirements. And
Mm.
the entire gamut of cyber security, your data exposed to the public. In an NBOC, customers never access you directly. In a bank, they
Mm.
access you all the time through multiple channels. So building security in all fronts, in all manner possible. And then when customer logs in directly, the experience here, the speed with which he is given turnaround times, I mean, too much of difference compared to an NBOC. And
Yes.
so we did try our best to ensure that we were high on tech right from beginning. And today the investments journey continues in IT. So we continue to have a lot of projects going to keep enhancing our digital skills and capabilities as we go by. But IT is definitely something which is top of the mind for any banker, I'm sure.
Absolutely, and also on the treasury management side, how difficult, how steep was the learning curve? Because treasury management for an NBFC is very different for treasury management of a bank.
Well, I think that we got away, I think, a little easier because
Mm.
even as an NBOC, we used to have our people in treasury to maintain our borrowing from the banks and all that. So some little bit of experience on that was there in the system already. And as a small finance bank, anyway, we don't deal with foreign exchange and all. They're all purely only rupee. And so
Mm.
our treasury, I think, was smoother. It just fell in place fairly smoothly. One of our existing staff
Mm.
moved in treasury. He's still the number 2 in treasury department. And I think treasury has been, in my view, very smooth for us.
Let me try and get try and get our listeners to understand the experience of floating a public issue. So when you became a bank, it was necessary to go for a public issue. As an MFI, you had 93% foreign investment, but as a bank, you needed to reduce it to 49%. How did you go about doing this?
Yes, so public issue was the only option to get domestic institutional investors because they won't invest in unlisted companies. So we had to necessarily list the holding company. So we went ahead and listed the holding company. And the holding company, as per RBI guidelines, needed to have a 40% lock-in in the bank for a 5-year period. And another RBI guideline is that the bank has to itself list within 3 years. So we were really hoping that there'll be some concession given from RBI to not list the bank within 3 years, but allow us the 5th year so that we can actually merge the whole co with the bank and have only one listed entity in the system and not two. But unfortunately, that was really not available to us. And so we had to go and list the bank separately, and the whole co was also listed already. So we are now, having two listed entities for actually the same business.
Were you anxious before the run up to the listing? Where the issue was 17 times eventually oversubscribed. It was you got a favorable response. It was a blockbuster of sorts. But did you pass through some very anxious moments before the listing?
Yeah, it was the first listing experience for me. I had not done that before, and so we did do all the investor meetings and all that. We also had to highlight the fact that the holding company and the bank has a 5% donation to the CSR activities against the 2% mandated. So there's a lot of feedback from the bankers that whether that will be acceptable at the investor level. But we said that no, that's part of the ethos of the system and it can't be changed. And then when we went for the road shows, they told me that in Gujarat, at least, we don't talk too much about this 5% stuff. They may not like it. But I said, no, that's part of the system. I can't just keep it off. It's an investor information and they need to know. And so in Ahmedabad and Rajkot, when we had our investor meets, I did highlight that. And very surprisingly, investors came forward, and some of them, when they met me later on one-on-one, they said that, we have so far been recommending IPOs for subscription to our members based on the financials. And this is the first time I'm going to recommend an IPO with a lot of happiness in my mind. So that's the feedback that some of those people gave me. So it was very interesting. And so we did go through a lot of struggle to get the IPO off the ground because it was a large issue in those days. 2,200 crores was in those days one of the largest issues. And for a bank which does not have any background. As an NBOC, we have a lot of background. But as a bank, we had zero background. Bank was not even in existence at that time. It was April when we did the IPO. Bank started only in September. So it was all about giving them an idea of the future of the bank and ask them to invest today. So it was not such an easy job, but finally, thankfully, we did get a 17 times subscription.
Absolutely. Finally, let me come to the final chapter of your professional life. You have decided to move on from Equitas Bank. What next?
So this desire to do something for the society is something which has been there for some time now. So our own Equitas Trust, we are doing a lot of activities. We run 8 schools. Nearly 7,000 children studying in the schools, and we do a lot of work with the children to ensure that even post-school, we are there with them till they get a good college and then good placements, etc. And we do run medical camps. I think more than 8 million people have benefited through our medical camps. In fact, we tied up with all the state governments during the COVID period to organize vaccination camps for COVID. And we have, through our camps, more than 5 million people have been vaccinated through our camps that we organized and brought people to the camps. Skill training, job fairs, payment dweller rehabilitation, I mean, you name it. We have an extremely robust, strong social program going in Equitas. But parallelly, we had also started a trust in my daughter's name about 7 years or 8 years back, called Varshinilam Trust. And in that trust, we started an adoption center. There we have been running it for about 5-6 years now. It's a state central government accredited adoption program that we run there. And recently we have launched a doorstep therapy service for disabled children in the 0 to 3 year category. for people who are from the low income or semi-urban rural, where they don't have either money or access to proper therapy for their babies. And if at the earliest stage you don't attend to the babies, the deficiency becomes permanent, and then the child has to live with it forever. So if we can only intervene at the 0 to 3 year level, the probability of the child overcoming the deficiency is very high for the rest of its life. So we just launched that program, and we just need lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of money for doing this program as well as scaling it up. My own corpus in the bank is very small. Actually, in the bank, right from the beginning in Equitas, I never wanted to make money for myself. It was never my thought. I just wanted to create a very good, strong professional organization. So in 2009, I took a call to reduce my salary because I didn't need so much salary. My family didn't need it. So we took a decision to reduce my salary in 2009 to 45 lakhs per annum. And for 10 years, I never took an increase. I just never took an increase for the next 10 years. It was 45 lakhs for the rest of the 10 years. No bonus, no incentives, no ESOPs, no nothing. Because I said that even this money, I'm not able to spend. Why would I need more money? And so similarly on the bank also, I kept diluting. As an NBOC also, I kept diluting from day one. I never had much of a stake in the NBOC or the bank. And today my stake is just about 2%. So, but now I realize that maybe that's a mistake I made. Maybe I should have tried to create a larger wealth for ourselves, which we don't have to spend on ourselves. Till we were thinking about ourselves, we didn't need the money. But when you stop thinking about yourself, then suddenly you see that money can do so much more outside of you. And so now my whole thought process is, how do I create a very large corpus for this Varshnil Trust so that the monthly regular income should be able to help it run large sustainable programs?
Take us through the formation of the Edit Trust. Did you have it in your mind from the beginning?
Yeah, so we started the Edit Trust, Equitas Trust, within 2 months of starting operations of the company. So this thought of giving back was there in our mind even before the company was formed. And as soon as the company was formed, we passed a resolution that 5% of our profit will go to the trust. So these are the structural things we put in place right from day one. And also some people told me that trusts are generally areas where a lot of management issues happen, and people become have vested interest. They run it in their own personal interest and all that. So to avoid all that, what we did is that in the original trust deed, we said that the board of Equitas will be the only one who is competent to appoint or remove trustees. So that it's always under the control of Equitas and not under anyone else's control. And so that's how it started. So we are now running about 8 schools in Tamil Nadu with about 7,000 plus children studying there. We give them high quality English medium education. These children are typically children from families whose annual incomes are less than 2 lakh rupees. And many of them are first generation learners. And it's all English medium that we provide them. Of course, we do a lot of other activities to make it a holistic education for the children. We also handhold them even after they graduate out of the school. We handhold them. We try to find out the right additional courses they should take to make themselves better empowered by the time they finish their graduation. And wherever required, we fund those additional courses because many times they don't have the money for that. And then the medical program is another large mega project that we run. We have a tie with over 900 hospitals across the country. We conduct nearly 300 camps every month. Almost 50,000 people benefit on a monthly basis, and nearly 80 lakh people have benefited so far through our programs. Then we do skill training for people from low-income families. Nearly 5.5 lakh people have been skill trained so far. And some survey that we did earlier revealed that almost 55% of those who have been skilled by us have reported an increase in their family income between 500 and 2,000 rupees per month. So there's some amount of improvement that we're able to see on their income levels.
Thank you so much, Mr. P. N. Vasudevan, for this very fascinating and insightful conversation. for taking the time out and drop by to have this conversation with us exclusively at Earshot, giving us a glimpse of what you have achieved through very difficult circumstances, and also sharing an experience about how to overcome challenges, think big, think with a clear vision in mind, and also adopt a people first philosophy, because that is what life is all about. Thank you so much, Mr. Vasudevan, and all the best for your future endeavors.
Thank you, Gaurav, and thank you so much.